humans. The most common race in any D&D world, not most common for players, but in the general populace of the world, humans are the most common. And they're generally described as being the most versatile, the most adaptable. And in some ways, that is still true in 5th edition, but not as much as it is in 3rd or even in earlier editions. But we are just talking about 5th and 3rd in these videos, so let us consider what humans are in 3rd and 5th edition. And we'll start with 5th, and let's just go through the list of traits really quick. Now first, as every race, we have an increase to our ability scores. Now humans, they get a +1 to every single ability. All 6 go up 1 if you're a human. And we'll come back to this. This is a bit in... This not only is very powerful, but it's actually very significant to what a human is. And so, one thing to mention here is that this is the highest increase of any race in 5th edition, because you get a total of a +6. Other races will get a higher increase to a single ability. Usually they get a +2 to one ability, and then a sub-race will give them another +1 to an ability score. So they get a total of +3. Humans get a +6. Now that in itself makes humans fairly powerful when it comes to that. Now, they don't have much else in the way of racial abilities, which kind of balances it out. But in ability score increase, they have the highest. We then have age. They reach adulthood in late teens and never live over a century. Alignment, they don't tend to any particular alignment. Size. It starts off saying, they range between 5 and a little over 6 feet, but that makes them medium. Their speed is 30 feet. Now, languages are an interesting thing here. That they speak Common and one other language. So they always start with 2 languages. And that's your basics for a standard human in 5th edition. +1 to all ability scores, medium, speed of 30, and they get 2 languages to start with. The age and alignment are more flavor than anything else, really. In 3rd edition, we have medium, just like in 5th. We have a speed of 30, just like in 5th. But because of the way skills and feats work, humans get an extra skill point. Now, first level, they get 4 extra skill points, and we'll discuss why that is later. But it works in with the mechanics of the skills in 3rd edition. 4 extra ones at first level and 1 every level after. And then they start with an extra feat. And feats are much more common in 3rd edition, so this 1 extra feat is actually... It's not a great thing, but it is very advantageous. However, languages, we get Common, and that's it. Now it says bonus languages, but bonus languages you only get if you have a high enough intelligence. So humans have no racial language, they just speak Common. Practically speaking, the common tongue that is used in D&D is really the human language. That's really what it is. But humans being the biggest trade, they explore more, they travel more, therefore their language has become the language of commerce, and therefore it is the common tongue. So they don't have a racial language, and so they only get additional languages if they have a high intelligence. But when it comes to bonus languages, they have no restrictions as to what languages they can take, with the exception of secret languages like Druidic or Thieves' Cant and those kind of things. But they can learn any language they want as a human, as long as they have a high enough intelligence. Other races will be restricted onto what languages they can take as bonus languages, but humans do not have that restriction. Now, speed, size, languages, all basically the same as over here. The one difference is we got extra skills, extra feats. This does translate over to 5th edition, however, if you go down to this little extra box of the human variant. Because feats exist in 5th edition, but are an optional rule that GMs can choose to use or choose not to use. If you want to be a little more complicated, you use feats. If you want to keep it simple, you don't. And if you're not using feats, you can't use the human variant. But the human variant basically copies these two things from third edition. It makes the human the same as third. So it takes out this +1 to all 6 ability scores, and we replace it with a +1 to only 2 ability scores, your choice. And then you get 1 skill proficiency and 1 feat, basically copying this. The skill and feat mechanics are different in third edition, and so they don't translate exactly. So instead of getting 1 skill point per level, we just get 1 skill proficiency, but it's the same basic thing. So if you accept the variant rule or the optional rule of feats, you can then use the variant human. And that gives you a little bit more versatility in the human. They get to make a few extra choices. And other races don't really have choices. They just, you get this, you get this, you get this, you get this. Even on languages, other races will have common and a racial language. Only humans get to make a choice of what language they learn. And if you use the variant, then they get a choice of an extra skill, which makes them not only more versatile in that they are able to choose, but they have more. Of course, as I said, other races have a lot more racial abilities, so it all kind of evens out in power level, but the humans are the only ones that get a choice when it comes to race. Now, of course, other races choose their sub-race, but then the sub-race has specific things you get. You don't actually make a choice. You choose your race and your sub-race, and then everything is given to you. With humans, you choose your race, and then you have some options that you can work with. This makes them just slightly more versatile than other races in 5th edition. Now, in 3rd edition, because of the extra feat and extra skill, as a race, you also get a few extra options in the same way. But their extra options continue throughout your levels because of that extra skill point. It's not much, 1 extra skill point level, but it does give you more options. And so it's just slightly more variable, slightly more flexible than 5th edition. But only slightly in that regard. But there's one last thing to mention, and that we will start here with 3rd edition, where we have the favored class. Now, if you will recall, in my last video, I talked briefly about the favored class, that if you have multiple classes, and you're not doing them quite right, you can take a penalty to the experience points you gain. But each race has a favored class, and whatever that class is, doesn't count towards towards the penalty of experience you gain. For example, a dwarf is a fighter, an elf is a wizard, and so on. Humans, their favorite class is always whatever class they have the most levels in. And we'll get into the details of multi-classing in a future video, but this is just, like an elf, favorite class of wizard, if he gets a rogue and a fighter classes, then he can take a penalty because he doesn't have a wizard. And if you say he's a rogue fighter wizard, well, the wizard won't count against it, but he can still take a penalty from that. But humans, whatever class is their highest level class counts as their favorite class, which means that you can change your favorite class. So if humans say a level 2 fighter and a level 1 rogue, well, then the fighter counts as his favorite class. But then he takes a level in wizard. Well, the fighter is still his favorite class. If he takes another level in wizard, well, fighter and wizard are equal. One of them's his favorite class. He puts a 3rd level in wizard. Now the wizard is his favorite class. And so in this way, the human becomes more versatile because of the multi-classing rules. And he can change his favorite class. He's able to adapt into different classes. Other races aren't able to do this. They have one favorite class, and depending on how you do multi-classing, they will take penalties that a human can more easily avoid. Multi-classing in 5th edition works very differently. And because of the way it works, humans, again, have more versatility than other races. They do not have the same kind of versatility as in 3rd edition, because there's no favorite class in 5th. There's no penalty for multi-classing in 5th edition. What there is instead is a restriction on the ability to multi-class, meaning in 5th edition you have to have certain ability scores high enough to be multi-class. So if you want to be a barbarian druid, if you start off as barbarian, you want to add some levels of druid, you've got to have a 13 in what is it, Constitution and Wisdom? If you don't have a 13 in Wisdom, you can't multi-class as a druid. Because humans get a +1 to all 6 ability scores, their potential to multi-class is increased. Because they get that bonus to everything. So, like, a dwarf, I believe, gets a +2 to his Constitution. So any class that requires Constitution for multi-classing, the dwarf will be more able to multi-class into that class. Because the human gets a bonus to everything, he is more able to multi-class into any class. And this makes him just slightly more versatile again than other races. He only gets a +1, so it's not as likely. It's not going to make him so he can multi-class into everything, most likely. But he has more options here. So both give you the human class is fairly standard, fairly generic. He has no special abilities, unless in 5th edition he gets his feat, which in 5th edition is a pretty good thing. Feats are very powerful in 5th edition compared to 3rd. But I mean, it's just basically standard stuff. You're a medium creature, your movement's 30, and you speak 1 or 2 languages. You have some versatility in the languages you can learn that other races don't. But the true versatility of the human in both 5th and 3rd edition is the multi-classing option. They can multi-class more easily than any other race. Now, I will say, most people don't do multi-class. Multi-classing is a very uncommon thing for players or GMs. I do it pretty often myself. I enjoy multi-classing. I think it's fun. I think it's a good thing. It's something that gives a lot of variety to the game. And humans can do it easier than any other race in both editions. Just one last note here. In 3rd edition, you get the extra skill, the extra feat, and it is easier for the human to multi-class. In 5th edition, it's easier for the human to multi-class because of this +6. This +1 to all 6 ability scores. But if you use the human variant, you are sacrificing your ability to multi-class in order to gain an extra skill and a feat. Because you have to give up that + to all 6 and only take a +2. Now, you're still slightly more able to multi-class compared to other races because you can choose which ability scores you increase. And so if you're looking ahead, you can say, well, I'm going to want to multi-class later on, so I'm going to raise this ability score. But you really do sacrifice your ability to multi-class by taking the human variant. In 3rd edition, you have both. You have the diversity of the skills and feats, but you also have the ability to multi-class more easily than any other race. You don't have to choose between the two. And that is the difference of at least the game mechanics and racial traits of the human race comparing 3rd and 5th edition. I will do an analysis of the actual descriptions that are not part of the game mechanics, such as personality, physical descriptions, societies, and that. But that will be reserved for Patreon only. So if you would like to get my analysis of how they describe the race, check us out on Patreon. So there you have it. That is the human between 3rd and 5th edition. And we will see you when we discuss, I believe, the dwarf will be next.